Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. Today I think it's going to be a pretty short video compared to my other videos because I've already been out and about today. It's already afternoon. You can see my hair's up, which means I had errands to run this morning. Lots to get to, but I wanted to follow up on my weaving in ends in knitting with how I weave in ends in crochet. Little bit different. With knitting, I talked about up and down and back and forth and kind of making triangles. And in crochet, I do something a little simpler, but it does involve some back and forth. You really want to lock in your ends before you cut them. I do not tie knots. I gotta make that really, really clear. So, as my cat is eating his dinner in the next room and making a lot of noise, let's get to it. So weaving in ends, the crochet version. Some of this will be very similar to knitting, and some will be a little different. For crochet, I think it's really important to find a stable location. And I often will use the base of my stitches. So I'll talk about in a minute what that means. The base, the bottom of the stitches, tends to have a pretty stable place to sew your ends in. You're going to use, I'm going to jump down here to say, we're going to use a big eye, often blunt tipped, sewing needle. And I use the yarn, I don't split it in half, I don't do anything funky with it, but I will use, we got right here, a rather large one with a big eye. Let's go back up to my steps here. Back and forth is the motion I use, going left and right, back and forth, however you want to talk about it. Under at least 3 stitches, the bottom of at least 3 stitches, to lock it down. We want to lock down the end so it won't come unraveled, so it'll need some gymnastics to come back out again. I cannot stress enough, no knots, no. You can, if that's really how you're comfortable doing it. Here's the issue I see with knots. The reason I avoid them is they make a hard bump, which you can often feel, and by sewing your ends in, you won't have this hardness to your work. And also, if you cut the fabric, you cut the yarn really close to this knot, it can come untied. Depending on the fiber of the yarn you're using, it is not a foolproof way to attach ends together or to stop your work. I find leaving a good 6-inch tail and weaving it in. So I'm going to have to put a couple of basics down here I wasn't thinking about. It's already been a long day since I'm not filming this in the first thing in the morning. Using a big-eyed, often blunt-tipped sewing needle, and using a tail at least 6 inches to weave in. Make that a little clearer. Really, these are things that should go up top before we even start. But, you know, I'm notorious for kind of winging it. Sewing needle. The tail, what I mean by the tail is the end of your yarn. So once you finish off a piece, Leave at least 6 inches there before you snip it to weave it in. So I have started with color this time. I usually start with a blank canvas and color things in. The reason that I have colored this in is I have done 3 rows of crochet here. Starting from the bottom, say this is our beginning chain. We've got 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. We've got our pink row, our blue row, and our green row. And the way this is facing me right now, row A, this is the back of the stitches. If I could make things clear. Row B here, this is the front. If I'm turning it around every row, this is what it will look like. And row C up top, this is the back again. Now what I drew here are double crochets. And let's look at the B, the blue row here. The front of double crochets, they are taller stitches and they have a twisting motion to them. Tall and twisty is why I like double crochets. Now, however, row C and row A, the back side of double crochet is a little chunkier. It looks more like chunk, 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 chunk going up. What these have in common is the very bottom, which I've color coded with a darker green, a darker blue, a darker pink. There are 2 strands that kind of lock the stitch in place at the base, down at the base. Here's the base of row C, the base of row B, the base of row A. And those stitches, I find that base part, see how it's really consistent across here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rest of this, there's a lot of zigzagging and chunking going around, but there are 2 loops at the base of each stitch that really are there for every single stitch and run all the way across the row. That is a really great place to lock in your tails of your yarn. And down here, I'll also do it up here. I'll do it in both places because down here might be a little hard to see. Say we had a tail hanging off that we needed to weave in. Here's our tail. Again, you want that to be 6 inches. If you put that on a sewing needle, if we put this on a sewing needle so we can weave it in, here's what I would do. 1, 2, 3. I would go under, step 1, I would go under this whole stitch and this whole stitch and this third whole stitch, and then I would circle back. And for step 2, right up in here, I would skip over this first one, over, and then go back under these two, back out over here. And then step 3, I would circle over one strand and then under everything else. And I'd go back under. Not confusing at all, right? But it would get locked under those 3 stitches. Let's try it again up top. You can do it on the front side of a stitch, but it might be a little more visible. And these front sides of the stitch might not give you as much clarity as the back side. You see how that really is chunky on the back side. So let's start from over here. let's say our strand was coming from over here. I would go under these two, keep going, under these two, keep going, under these two, come out here. Then I would circle back, over one stitch, go under the next. Try not to go over too much, so you can, enough to lock it in place, because if you didn't go over this one, it would all just come back out again. So over one and then back under these two, back under these two, come out here, and then go over just one of them, under one, under two, under these guys, and then I would cut it. And that should be enough to weave in your ends so it won't come out. Let's see what this looks like on real yarn. So here's my crocheted sample. And I have it, I'm facing it in the same direction as the drawing that I just showed y'all. So this is my bottom row. Here's my tail that started it all. Here's my bottom row where I have the back of the stitches, and they look a little chunkier. 1, 2, 3. We can see all these pieces that all go straight up and down. This middle row, right in here, this is the front side of the stitch. When the front side of a crochet stitch, double crochets, you've got more slanting. There's still ups and downs, but there's more twisties right in the middle. And then here's the third row. And it's the back side again, because you're turning your work every time. So back, front, back. And again, there is more chunky stuff that's going straight up and down. All of these have a bottom to their stitch that locks it into the row underneath. Here's the bottom of this top row, these two strands. This guy, they're a little more recessed on the front side, but here are the strands that are locking them into the row underneath. All of these guys under here. And then down here, even on the beginning row, we can see the strands that are locking it into the beginning chain. So I'm going to show you up here with a different color what I was just demonstrating. So even though this is not a huge needle, I can still get my super bulky yarn on it. I personally twist it up, pinch it, get it in there, and kind of open and force it through. Is how I thread this yarn. Sometimes people will take it and they'll double it on their needle so they have something that's not frayed, and then they can force that through. It all depends. If it's super bulky, sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it does. We also have needle threaders in our shop if you'd like them. So let's pretend that this yarn was the end over here or over there. But I'm over on this side right now. I'm a lefty. It's easier for me. So to demonstrate what I was doing over on the drawing, remember 1, 2, bottom of the stitch, 1, 2, bottom of the stitch, 1, 2. I would go under these two of the first stitch, 2 more of the second, 2 more of the third. I'm going as much under them as I can. I might be splitting them slightly. If it's the same color, it won't matter. And I'm going to pull it through. Now let's say wherever this was attached, I would pull it till it stopped. Then I'm going to skip one of these lumps on this stitch. But I'm going to go under the second one, and I'm going to go back through everything I just came through. I'm going to pull snug and not tight. If I pulled really tight and say this was still attached, I could pull it, it would all get distorted. I don't really want that. So I'm going to pull snug and not tight. It's not about how tight you make this weaving in. The tighter you make it, the more you will actually feel it just like a knot. So I've gone backwards once. I'm going to skip over this one, and I'm going to go back. I've made 3 passes now, and really that is enough. that is enough that the acrobatics it would take for either of these ends to fully come out, to have to back up this way, then that way, then this way, it's going to take a lot. If that doesn't feel secure enough to you, you could go back again, but if you keep doing it in the same spot, it might get thick. You might want to go under a few more. And come back this way. Again, you're just locking it down in place more. Skip over one strand and go back, and skip over one strand and go forward. Now let's see what this looks like. I did it with a different color yarn, and you can see where my locks are to keep it in place, and also over here. What if we did it with the same color yarn so you can see what will happen? So let's take the tail, and let's start over here and go this way with this yarn. So I'm going to go under 2 strands, 2 strands, 4 strands, 2 more strands make 6. I'm going to really muscle it through there, but then make sure it's not super tight. Now I want to skip this strand and go back through the other 5, especially if I haven't tightened it up too much. Settle it into place. Now I'm going to skip over this strand, and I'm going to go back the other way. And at some point I have probably split this yarn, but since it's all the same color, I don't think it really matters. Now if I clip this fairly close, which it's hard to do because my scissors have disappeared, but if I clip that really close, you wouldn't even see that it was there. Yeah, so I found them. Okay. I don't need to clip it extremely close because it'll probably work its way out a little bit, but cut it just like that, settle it in, barely notice it, and especially from the front, you won't notice that it's there. There you go. So thanks for joining us on this quick excursion to talk about weaving in ends in crochet. Back and forth, no knots, base of the stitches are the things I would tell you to remember. Now sometimes you'll be doing a pattern where there won't really be that many bases of stitches close together. If it's something more open, if it's a grid, in that case you kind of have to fudge it. But you can use these essentials to help you figure out where do you think the most stable place will be. And can you go back and forth in some way? It could be fewer than 3 stitches. In a granny square, it might only be 2. Do you want to lock in one place and move to another? You're going for something that doesn't add too much bulk, but secures things down. Definitely let me know if you have any questions on that. Also, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing so you get alerts when we do new things. Let me know in the comments what else you would like to hear about, and I'll get working on that next Monday. I hope everyone is staying safe and staying well, and reach out to me if you want to arrange a one-on-one appointment. I am always happy to do that. But for now, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. See you later. Oh no, baby, huh? The noble kitty. Maybe your purring will get caught on camera. Because I think your meowing happened before I hit record. Yes? Oh. The calm kitty. Calmness in a world of chaos. Yes.